A disturbing question is being asked in the wake of the death of a teenager who plummeted to the ground last week during an amusement park ride. At more than 300 pounds, was the young man simply too heavy?
He called me, he said, Mom, and frantic, so my heart is racing. And I said, what's wrong, what's wrong? He said, somebody just fell from off the ride.
It's Thursday evening, March 24th, 2022, at the Icon Park in Orlando, Florida. And it's spring break. The air is electric with laughter, screams of thrill seekers, and the hum of 1,000 conversations mixing with the mechanical sounds of the rides. For millions of visitors every year, this stretch of International Drive is where memories are made, where the ordinary becomes extraordinary. Icon Park sits right at the heart of it all. A 20-acre entertainment complex packed with attractions designed to push the limits of excitement. Rising above everything else is a steel tower that seems to pierce the sky itself, 430 feet tall, taller than the Statue of Liberty, the Orlando FreeFall. It's the newest attraction, barely 3 months old, and it's already making waves. The marketing is everywhere, the world's tallest freestanding drop tower. 30 riders at a time, lifted to the clouds, given a moment to take in the sprawling city below, and then dropped over 400 feet at 75 miles per hour. But there's a twist that sets this ride apart. At the very top, just below the plunge, the seats tilt forward 30 degrees. Riders don't just fall, they face the ground, rushing up to meet them. For 14-year-old Tyre Sampson, visiting from St. Louis with a friend's family, this was supposed to be the highlight of the trip. By all accounts, Tyre was exceptional. An honor roll student, kind-hearted, respectful. His friends called him a gentle giant, a teddy bear. His real passion was football. Standing somewhere between 6'2" and 6'5", weighing over 300 pounds, he was built for the game. His father called him Big Tick, convinced he was the next big thing. On the field, his size was his greatest asset. That evening in Icon Park, it would become something else entirely. As Tyre and his friends approached the freefall, the anticipation was building. The line moved forward, and soon they were boarding the circular gondola. An employee in a red beanie moved between the seats, checking harnesses, lowering the over-the-shoulder restraints. Another guest, filming on his phone, caught something in the audio, riders talking among themselves, questioning whether the harnesses were secure even before the ride started its climb. The gondola began its ascent. Slow, steady, climbing higher and higher. The ground fell away. The parking lots, the other rides, the traffic on International Drive, all of it shrinking beneath them. Tyre's friend, sitting right next to him, told investigators later that he got nervous at the top. He closed his eyes and kept them shut until the ride stopped at the bottom. The gondola reached its peak. It rotated, giving everyone that promised view of Orlando stretching out in all directions. Then the seats tilted forward, 30 degrees, just enough to make everyone acutely aware of how far up they were. And then it dropped. 400 feet of free fall, 75 miles per hour, the wind, the rush, the sensation of weightlessness. And then, near the bottom, the magnetic brakes kicked in. That's the moment when the forces on the body are at their most intense. The gondola is slowing down rapidly, but the bodies inside want to keep moving. It's physics, pure and simple. Everything is pushing upwards against the restraints. That's when Tyre slipped out. Witnesses on the ground saw it happen. He fell from halfway up the tower, plummeting over 100 feet.
Getting the death of a 14-year-old boy after he fell from a ride at Icon Park in Orlando Thursday night. The incident happened around 11 o'clock that night on the free fall ride at the park there. Witnesses say the teen slipped from his seat as the ride dropped from 430 feet.
A 911 call captured the horror in real time. Quote, the thing went down, dropped, and when they got closer to the bottom, when it hit the brake, the guy fell right out of the seat. People were screaming, running, and trying to figure out where they even were in the sprawling complex to tell the dispatchers.
It felt like a dream. I didn't think it was real until I actually walked up.
Tyre's friend's father had been watching from outside the ride's gates. He rushed over, along with others. Tyre appeared to be breathing, but was unresponsive. And then came a detail that would haunt the investigation. Not a single park employee rendered aid. No one performed CPR, and in one of the 911 calls, a dispatcher started trying to walk a bystander through the steps. That should never happen. That means there was no coordinated response, no one trained and ready on site for something like this to occur. By the time deputies and paramedics arrived and got Tyre to the hospital, it was too late. He passed away from blunt force trauma. The Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services launched a full investigation. What they found wasn't a freak accident. It was a cascade of failures, layer after layer of ignored warnings, bypassed safety measures, and deliberate choices that prioritize profit over people.
You can check it? Yeah, the You guys are sure you checked it?
The first failure was the most basic. Tyre should have never been allowed on that ride in the first place. The manufacturer's manual was crystal clear. Maximum passenger weight, 287 pounds. The autopsy confirmed Tyre weighed 383 pounds, nearly 100 pounds over the limit. The manual even had specific instructions for operators. Be careful with larger guests. Check that they fit within the contours of the seats. If they don't, do not let them ride. But here's the thing. That weight limit wasn't posted anywhere riders could see it. Under Florida law at the time, parks only had to post restrictions if the manufacturer required it. The sign for the FreeFall listed a minimum height, but no maximum weight. Tyre and his family had no way of knowing he was in danger. The operators knew. They just didn't care. The investigation's most damning finding came next. The ride safety system had been tampered with.
You can check it? Yeah, You guys are sure you checked it?
Each seat had a proximity sensor, a device that ensures the over-the-shoulder harness is closed properly before the ride can start. Investigators found that the sensor on Tyre's seat had been physically moved. This allows the harness to register as locked with a gap of over 7 inches, more than double the safe distance. It tricked the system. The green light came on. The ride thought that everything was secure when it absolutely was not. This wasn't some random mechanical failure. Someone manually adjusted that sensor, likely to fit larger guests, to keep the line moving, and to maximize revenue. And it worked, right up until it killed someone. The ride's design itself was flawed from the start. It relied entirely on that single over-the-shoulder harness. No backup, no secondary restraint. Many drop towers have simple seat belts, just a strap that runs between the seat and the harness. The Sampson family's legal team pointed out that installing seat belts on all 30 seats would have cost about $22 each, $660 in total. That's it. A secondary restraint that almost certainly would have saved. Then came the testimony about the culture at the company operating the ride. A former maintenance technician filed a whistleblower lawsuit. He claimed he'd raised safety concerns weeks before Tyre's death. Sensors being modified to fit larger guests, equipment overheating, cracks in the structure, all ignored by management. He said he and his colleagues received no formal training on maintenance or safety. The ride's general manager confirmed it. Training records were missing. Some had even been falsified after the tragedy, backdated with fake signatures. Daily inspection logs had been altered. This wasn't just negligence, it was a deliberate, systemic cover-up. The lawsuits came fast. Tyre's parents, represented by civil rights attorney Ben Crump, filed a wrongful death case against Icon Park. The ride operator called the Slingshot Group and the Austrian manufacturer Funtime.
We think this was completely preventable. We're here doing a thorough investigation of this tragic killing. Other than George Floyd's tragic torture video, I think this is the worst tragedy captured on video.
Icon Park and the Slingshot Group settled quietly in March 2023 for an undisclosed amount. The state of Florida went after the operators separately. hitting them with $250,000 worth of fines. Funtime did something unusual. They did nothing. No representative showed up in court, no defense. In December 2024, after a one-day trial, an Orange County jury delivered a $310 million verdict against the manufacturer, $150 million for each of Tyre's parents. It was a moral victory, a statement that this kind of negligence has consequences. Collecting that money from an Austrian company is another battle entirely. But that message was sent clearly. The tower itself became a symbol, standing there on International Drive, 430 feet of steel, a monument to failure. Tyre's mother, Nakia Dodd, made its removal a priority. In October 2022, the operator announced it would be taken down. Quote, "We have listened to the wishes of Tyre's family and the community," they said. The dismantling began in March 2023, almost exactly a year after the incident. Nakia traveled to Orlando to watch it happen. She called it bittersweet. In an industry where rides are usually just sold and moved somewhere else, this one was destroyed completely. The tragedy sparked real change. State Senator Geraldine Thompson championed what became known as the Tyre Sampson Act, signed into law in July 2023. It targeted every failure that led to Tyre's death. Parks must now post weight and height restrictions prominently at the entrance to every ride. Any major modifications to ride safety systems has to be reported to the state. There are now minimum training standards for operators, and the state can conduct surprise inspections. The law made Florida's smaller parks safer, but it exposed something else. The biggest parks in the state, Disney World and Universal Orlando, are exempt. They've had a special carryover for decades. They inspect themselves, they self-report incidents. Tyre's case brought that into the spotlight, and it's a conversation that's far from over. Tyre Sampson's death wasn't an accident. It was the result of choices. A manufacturer chose not to include a $22 seatbelt. Operators chose to ignore a weight limit and tamper with safety sensors. Management chose to ignore warnings and falsify records. Each choice on its own was reckless, but together they were fatal. The $310 million judgment, the demolished tower, and the new law bearing his name, these are steps towards accountability. But the real lesson is vigilance. Safety regulations only work if they're enforced everywhere for everyone. Tyre was a gentle giant with the future ahead of him. He deserved better, and his legacy demands that we do better.